you're using. If you have participants, if you're going to carry out an experiment on people, give information about your participants, the materials that you're going to use, your variables, your equipments. This is the information you should give. This section is the area, well, this method section is the section where you're presenting your study, your research design, which is very important. When you're writing your method section, be careful, give the information that is necessary so that other researchers, after you publish. Hello? Okay, sorry, just thought I heard someone say something. You give the sufficient information for after you publish your article, other researchers can take your methods, can take your research design and replicate it for their own studies or their own experiments that they want to carry out. For example, if I'm going to carry out a research that is similar to someone else's research, I will look into their methods section. I will look at their research design. And if I feel it is appropriate for my research, I will take their method. I will either adopt it or I will use it just as it is, and I will cite them. Okay, this is the way we actually carry out research. If it's been used somewhere else, you can use it for your study as well, as long as you cite it. Now, I have a few tips on the method section, how to write it. When should you start writing your method section? You should start the moment you start to carry out your research. Why? Because when you first, so sorry about my voice. I spent the whole day speaking, that's why it's croaking up. When you start off your research, you decide on the method that you're going to use. So you've decided on your method, and now you're going to put it into practice. You're going to start your research. But you could face many different problems. There could be certain details that are important for you to write in your article. But if you decide to do this at the end, once you're done with the research, you may actually miss out on this detail, which is going to be vital. So you're not going to write the actual abstract or the actual manuscript before. Just make notes, take down notes, give details. Just do some rough writing of what you've done, what you're doing, what you've decided, because sometimes your research design can actually change twice, 3 times, 4 times, because once you start carrying out the research, you may change your mind. Some results you gain may not be sufficient enough for you, so you may decide to change the whole design. So start writing the moment you start your research. Secondly, start off your manuscript or your methods section with general information. Okay, don't start with the minor details. Just give the general idea of the method that you're using that is sufficient for your whole manuscript. And then I want you to start going into detail towards the end of the method. And then, just like I said before, include citations. How can we include citations in the method section? Well, if I'm using a research design that another researcher has carried out, I will write down the name of the research, or the questionnaire, or the method that was put across by somebody else. I will write the name down and I will cite it. If I am using someone else's method or a method that's been used before, it's always best to cite it. Okay, don't ever forget to do that. And then, if we're using any statistical tests or any form of tests in our research, you have to give detail. You have to describe to the reader what this test is. For example, in one of my last researches that I carried out, I used a log likelihood test. It's a statistical test. I have to give information because maybe the reader may not actually know what this is. So I have to give information and describe what the test is. I have to give the formula if there is a formula, and then I move on with my article. This is very important because the reader has to know what you're doing. And then when we're writing the sentences, try to give the purpose within the sentence. Give the purpose to why you're doing this, and then explain what you're doing. For example, there's an example sentence here. To compare the elemental composition of our samples, we performed X-ray diffraction on the samples 2 and 3. Now, what are we doing? Well, firstly, giving the purpose of why we're doing it, and then we're giving the information to what we are doing. This is a small trick, but I would advise you to use it. And then stay clear of discussing the pros and cons in the methods and results section. For example, if you're using a method, do not give information to if that method is very effective or this part, it's ineffective in this point of view, but it's good on this aspect. No. The methods section is where you give the information. You explain, you describe the methods. You don't give the pros and cons of methods or the results that you've had. Do not give information to the pros and cons, to what's good of it, what's bad. That's the information you give in the discussion, okay? We do give that information, but not in the methods and results. And when you're structuring your methods section, make sure it's similar to your results section, because like we've spoken in the first workshop, we need the flow of your article, not just in the sentences, not just in the paragraph, but they all have to be linked. You need a perfect flow. So what the structure of your methods should be very similar, if not the same, as your results section. Now, things you should avoid when writing a method. These are small points, but very effective points. Keep the section straightforward. Just like I said before, do not give too much unnecessary information. If there is a certain information you must give it. Give thorough information, but keep it straightforward, okay? Do not go into unnecessary information, and do not give irrelevant details. Because when the reader is going to read your methods section, and they see that something, some detail in that is very irrelevant, they're going to start asking you, why did they give this information? And if you've given it, then you have to continue it. So irrelevant details is a no-no. Keep them out of your text. Now, there is some basic procedures that you can use in your research. These information is definitely not necessary. So keep them out unless it's a piece of information that the reader must know. So when you're giving information in the methods area, you just have to think, what does the reader need to know? When the reader reads my text, what are they going to understand? Are they going to understand the information I'm giving? So I have to think about the information I want to give and what I want them to understand, okay? And another point, if you have faced a few problems in your in your research, while carrying them out, you may have faced some problems, give information of this in your article and explain how you overcame them. Do not leave these points out, they are necessary. Now, in the results section, what are we actually doing in our results section? We are giving the reader the information of what we have gained when carrying out this method, when carrying out this research, this experiment. What have we gained? What information do we have? How can you structure these sections? You can firstly give the purpose of your experiment, why you carried out this experiment, what was your purpose, what was your aim, and then your approach, how you approach to carry out this purpose, and then you give the results. But the most important part is interpreting your results. okay? You can give results, yes, you can give them a whole load of information, but you have to interpret them because you're the only one who can read those results. You have loads of numbers in front of you. You know what you were looking for. You know how to read them, but your reader doesn't. So once you see these numbers at hand, you have to interpret them so that the reader can understand everything you say. Now, when writing our results, we can use pie charts, tables, graphs. We have to explain everything. But when we're explaining it, we have to be sure to use the right methods. For example, if I don't have numbers in my research, if I'm not dealing with numbers, then there's no point in me including a pie chart in my results section. I have to use those that I need, okay? You have to know how to present your data because what we're doing in our results section is we're presenting what we have found, and how effective we present it is how effective our results section is, okay? Now, like I've been saying ever since the first day of the first workshop, presenting your article effectively is very important. So every choice you make, you have to think about it. Am I being effective? Is this going to be effective? If it is, then the reader is going to be happy and you are going to have a greater article. So I'm trying to talk slowly, but I'm not quite sure if I'm running off a little. I'm very sorry if I am. Now, data or results. This is something that these two terms, some people do seriously get confused over. Sometimes they ask them, some people think they're both the same thing, but they're not. They're totally different from one another. What is data? Research data is the information that you collect, that you have collected at the end of your experiment or your research. Raw data, you have a handful or a bulk of data, okay? These are your results from your experiments. Or, for example, in most of my studies, I use corpus. And my data is actually this corpus. People have carried out research as experiments and collected a huge, big database. And I'm using their corpus. I'm using raw data. I work with the data. What do? I analyze them, and then I put across the results. What are the results? The results are actually interpreting the data, okay? The data is the raw information that you have in hand as a result of your research or your experiment, and the results is the way you present them. You have numbers or figures in your data, in results. What are you doing? You're drawing them. You're putting meaning to these numbers. You're putting meaning to data so that the reader can understand what is happening in your study, what you have found, what you have come across, and what does it mean? So you have to know the difference between these two. Now, I have a few tips on writing the results. Firstly, you have to direct the reader to the research data, okay? And then you have to explain the meaning of the data. What do I mean by this? I have numbers. First, I give the numbers, okay? For example, I've gained 50% of this, 50% of that. There's a decrease here, there's an increase there. I give the data, and then I explain what they mean, okay? And then I put them to meaning. Data, numbers, figures, and then you explain, okay? This is how you should carry them out. But be clear not to repeat your texts. For example, you have 10 tables in your results, okay, with all these numbers and stuff in them. And then you start giving the information on the data, then you start explaining them. Don't use this as a structure and just constantly have the same sentence, the same paragraph under every text, under every table. That is a definite no-no. We do not do that. Change the sentences, paraphrase them. It's very easy to paraphrase them. If you want to stop repeating yourself in any section of an article, but you're giving similar information, paraphrase them. Do not use the same structures. This will be too boring and will not look very sophisticated. Okay, if you have important findings, you have to highlight them in your results, okay? Make sure to attract people, tell them this information is very important and this is the information that I have gained. This is the information that I'm putting across to you. Always highlight them. And when you start off the results section, be sure to give the most important findings first. In the first paragraph, give this information, okay? Because think of it this way, you have a results section, you have loads of results. Some are going to be very minor, some are going to be very big. Start off with the big ones. Get the best to the first, okay? Keep the best at the top and then go into the minor details, because most readers are just going to look into the first paragraph, and that's where you affect people. That's where you affect your readers. That's where you grab their attention. Okay, the first paragraph is very important. And then another important thing, do not mismatch any of your table or figure numbers. Okay, if you're using tables, charts, diagrams, figures, make sure you number them correctly. Because if you make one mistake, that's going to ruin your whole results section. And that's actually that's actually very bad for you guys, okay? I'm trying to keep simple sentences, I'm so sorry. That's why I'm pausing from time to time, trying to choose the simplest words. But that is definitely not definitely very bad for you guys if you make such mistakes. They look minor, but they actually have very big bad effects on your text. And again, do not give excess information, okay? Giving too much information it's going to make your article look longer, but it's going to make it look cheap, okay? Because you only need to put the information that is vital for you, that's concerned with your study. In your results section, don't add any information that's got nothing to do with your research questions. That's a totally no-no, because you have your research questions and you're actually answering them in this section. So what were your questions? Try to remember your research questions. Actually, when you're writing the results, keep the questions on the side, okay? So the results you're giving have to be those that are related to your questions, okay? And if there's a piece of information that is not important for your questions, don't add them, or keep them as supplementary findings at the bottom. But do note it down, tell the reader. Okay, in the previous lectures, we've spoken of sentence connectors. Now, this is another way of using connecting sentences in the results section, the ing clauses. Now, this is also another effective way of forming very nice, formal, and pretty sentences, effective sentences. You see, the way you form sentences is very important because effectiveness is very, very important. You need effective sentences. You need wise, properly used sentences and words. It's going to be very effective. Now, I've given 3 examples here of how we can use ing clauses instead of sentence connectors. The first one, the magma flows into the pores of the rocks as a result, hold on, I can't see the rest of the sentence. As a result, the rocks rupture. How do we change that? We take away the as a result connector and we put in thereby causing them to rupture. Now, the second sentence, again, a current is sent through the material. As a result, the electrons are polarized. To add the ing, we say a current is sent through the material, polarizing the electrons. Lastly, when the piston is drawn upwards, the air below rises. This causes the pressure to fall. Now, I'm going to give you guys these slides again. The first sentence with the sentence connectors, they're not bad. They're very good sentences. But to stop yourself from repeating, you can take away your sentence connector as a result, or this causes, and then you can add in ing clauses. You're forming another effective sentence. Again, after today's workshop, look at these sentences, okay? Look at the way I've added ing clauses. I want you all to, okay, you guys are home. Sorry, I keep on saying I want you to go home because we're so used to teaching lessons outside. I'm so sorry, I keep on forgetting everybody's at home. You guys are at home, so after this workshop, look at these sentences once you get the slides, and then try to form your own sentences. But form two types of sentences, one with sentence connectors, and the second changing the sentence with a ing clause, and do that for 3 sentences, okay? This is what I want from you guys, because being able to form different types of sentences is very important, because you don't want the reader to see the same type of sentences again and again and again. We want effective articles. Okay, now with also ing clauses, we can form different types of sentences. Now, looking at the first example, a process sentence. Prices rise, thus leading to a drop in demand. Now, here by using the ing clause and the clause at the end, we're turning it into a process sentence. We're giving information about the process. Now, the second one, problem. Prices rise, thus increasing the chance of hyperinflation. Now, here what we've done is, again, we've used the ing clause, and then we've added on a problem. So we have formed a problem sentence. And lastly, solution. Prices rise, thus increasing earnings that can then be reinvested in the enterprise. As you can see, ing clauses are very useful, okay? They're brilliant for linking the sentences together. They're forming effective sentences. These are the type of sentences you seriously want to use in your articles. These are the structures you want to use. So when you look at this process, problem, and solution sentences, I want you to do the same thing. Today, after the workshop, or within this week, I want you to form sentences, process sentences, problem sentences, solution sentences. If you want to improve your academic English, my biggest advice would be to spend your time producing sentences. You don't have to produce a whole article. Find structures, okay? There's certain different types of structures of sentences. Try to rewrite them with your own words, with other subjects. Produce them yourselves. Do not copy them. If you try to form your own sentences, you're definitely going to learn these structures. And as you continue to practice and reproduce your own sentences, you are definitely going to learn these structures, and you're going to be much more comfortable after a certain time. That's why writing is very important. Now, again, in the last workshop, I gave you guys 3 articles. I'm going from those 3 articles again. We're going to be looking into the methods and results section. Now, the first article, again, is a review article. Like I said last workshop, it's an article where it's a type of article where people select articles that have been carried out before, they bring them together and they try to describe, or they try to put across new information, maybe compare these studies. In these sorts of articles, review articles, do not have methods or results section, because they haven't carried out these studies themselves. So what do? As we can see in this article, first they give the introduction to what the subject is, to what's been done in literature, and then they get their own subjects. They subcategorize them or categorize them into certain headings, and then they collect the information from the articles, separate them according to these headings, and then give the information. As you can see here, what they've done is they've cited many of the articles. They're giving information of what article has given what information. They're actually drawing a picture of the data that was gained by other articles. Again, as you can see here, that's another section they've given. They're giving information about other studies. These percentages, they're actually percentages that have been taken from other articles because it's a review article. And how have they given the table? Again, they've taken it from other articles and they've cited it. As you can see, MTA 2010. This was taken from that article. This is what review articles do. They take the information and they portray it to the reader. Of course, they're going to give a conclusion. They're going to give their own thoughts, their own readings, their own meanings in the conclusion section. But in the normal results section, the methods section, they just have the results of the article they're actually taking into hand. There's actually another way you can do this. You don't have to separate it into sections. You can actually separate it as studies. For example, you've given the introduction, and then what you do is, say I have 5 articles, I will have a section for each article. And then in every section, for example, I have article A, I will give information about the method they've used, about the results they've gained, about the conclusion that they have come to. So I'm separating them with each article. So I have a section of 5 articles. Now, what do research articles do? Research articles give methods, they give results. As you can see here, this one on metaphors, they've used participants. So they've carried out experiments, they have stimuli, they have participants, they've given information. Now, when you look here, when we look at the participants, we see that they've given the ages of the participants. Why? Because it's vital for this study. For example, the studies I carry out, I study in the area of sign language and deaf people. So if I'm using participants, in my participants, especially, for example, I use ELAN where I'm translating, I have deaf people that I work with. When I'm giving information to those deaf people, I actually give information to the age these people acquired sign language. Now, you won't see that sort of information in this study because it's not relevant for that study. But in my study, because for my study, the age that these deaf people acquired sign language is vital. So that is the sort of information that I must give because it's related to my study. So the information you're giving in every section has to be the information that's vital for your study, for your research design. That's very important. And as you can see, they've also given an fMRI image acquisition analysis, and they're actually giving information. For example, as you can see on the right side at the top, the method, the model they're using, it's called the general linear model, which they have taken from the Worsley and Friston study, 1995. This is how you cite in your methods section. They've used the model that Worsley and Friston have used. So they write the name down and then they give the citation. This is vital. Now the results. What have they done? This study had 3 questions. So what they've done is they've separated this results with 3 subsections. Behavioral aspect here, they've just given the information necessary. Now, as you can see in the first section, they've only just given the data without explaining much, because this person has chosen to do the explaining in the discussion section, which is something you can do. Now, this is the third article, sorry. Here again, they've given information about the participants that they've used, the number of participants they've used, and this is actually on learning strategies. So they've actually given information about the students, how effective, how efficient they are in language, because it's relevant information for them. It wasn't irrelevant information for the study before. So what I'm trying to point out here is the information you give, the detail you give to your readers should be those that are relevant to your research and your study questions, because the study questions is what shapes your study. You need your study questions. If you have your study questions, your research questions, you're trying to answer them. Okay, in the methods, you're giving detail about how you carried out this research process. That's very important. And then we go into the findings, and then you're answering your study questions in the findings. Now, here, this study has straightforwardly re-asked their study question. As you can see, results of the first question, what are the most frequently used strategies? Now, this is actually another way you can write your findings. You can just prepare them according to your answers, according to your study questions, just like the previous study. They haven't asked the question. They've just opened 3 subheadings that are related to their study questions. But here, they've straightforwardly re-asked their question, and then they go into explaining them. Now, as you can see before the table, they've found that there are 6 strategy groups. Yes, this is their data. They've carried out their research, and the data that they have in hand is that there are 6 strategy groups which were identified as a result of the research. Now, this is the data that they're giving. What have they done? When you look below the table, you see that they started to explain. They started to put these numbers into meaning. They have data, they're opening it up. So, because if I look at this table, I might not know what they're talking about. I just see numbers. Yes, I know what a mean is. But what does it mean in this table? 3.97. What's the relevancy? If I don't know it, it's not really going to mean anything to me. But what am I expecting the writer to do? Explain it to me. What does 3.97 mean? So what do? We give the data and then we explain it. We're interpreting the data that we have at hand. How could we interpret it? Is how effective our study or our results section is. And again, we've come to the end of our workshop. Just like last lesson, I've prepared a new list, a watch list. We have our shows or our series on the left side. Lie to Me is brilliant. I would definitely advise you guys to watch it. And then I have a documentary list in the middle, especially I would advise you guys to watch the Diana. And again, I have a few films that I've advised you guys to watch. Try to watch as many films. Try to read as many books as you can, because reading is definitely going to improve your English. And like I've said in the first, hold on, I'm going to close this and then I'm going to start talking. Okay, like I said in the first workshop, general English, social English is very important. Okay, what I mean by, if there are new joiners here, general English, social English is the English that you all learn at schools, okay, at the courses you go to. How good is your general or social English is very important, because that's the basis of the language. If you're good, then you're going to be very good and effective in academic English. So make sure Sorry. One of my favorite teachers, Gürol Salman, love him very much. So make sure that you improve your English, because if you're very comfortable with general English, then you're going to be very good at academic English. So read as many books, not just articles. If you're constantly reading articles, you're not going to show much improvement, but feed your general English, okay? Learn as many different structures and words as you can from general English, okay? So read different genres, okay? All sorts of books. Read magazines, read newspapers, read novels, anything, okay? The more information you get, the more structures you see, the better you're going to improve yourself in academic English. Thank you very much for watching and listening and taking out your time, everybody. Miss Dönmez, sorry, Miss Canbolat, if you like, we can go to the next section. Questions, yes.
Yes. If you want to ask question to Miss Jess, you can write the chat section, please.
Arkadaşlar şu anki ilk başladığımız 40 dakika bitti. Şimdi soru cevap yapabiliriz istiyorsanız, sorularınız varsa. Bir de ben birazdan size yoklama göndereceğim. Lütfen o yoklamada evet'i işaretleyin. Teşekkür ederim.
By the way, Başak, I'm really glad you like Lie to Me, and I would advise everybody to watch Lie to Me. Seriously, it's fun. Yes, Özdeş Kaya, I just want you to write the introduction section of your study, because you don't have much time and I wanted everyone to be able to complete the homework. Yes, of course, referencing is very important. Yes, I want a total academic introduction from you all. From the small information, the small tips I'm giving you in these workshops, I want you to use them. Of course, I'm not expecting perfect, brilliant academic text from you, yes, but I want you to see you put the effort in. Okay, so yes, you must use references in your introduction. That's very important. Make sure you cite them and make sure you cite them properly. Try to write as academic as you can. If I remember correctly, I said until the last lesson, the last workshop. So on the 5th workshop, you have to hand your homework in. You're going to have to ask Miss Dönmez and Canbolat about the link for downloading, I'm afraid.
Yes, we downloaded to YouTube, our YouTube channel.
Okay. 3 pages, yes, I will accept 3 pages, but I would prefer 5. I would prefer 5, but I'm going to take it easy on you guys, so I'm going to accept 3 pages as well. Okay, as far as I know, please do correct me, Ms. Canbolat and Dönmez, if I'm mistaken. You have to carry out you have to do your homework so that you can receive a certificate. And the homework is, I want you all to write an academic introduction to a research. The subject could be anything that you wish to, okay? It can be anything as long as you write something. 3 to 5 pages. It can be more than 5 if you wish. Read as much. Okay. When you're trying to improve your language, and if you're constantly assessing yourself, okay, to see if you've improved your language, am I getting better? Am I still in the same position? That's going to bring you down. Watch these shows, read your books, translate if you can, but give yourself some time. Say 3 weeks later, take a look at yourself. See if you're improving or not. But if you try to assess yourself after every film you've watched, after every book you've read, that's going to really bring you down, and that's going to have a negative effect on you. There's a certain stage in language learning. You're at that stage at B2 level. Some people see this at A2 or other levels. You'll see yourself on the edge of a line that you just can't seem to pass. This is totally natural, okay? Do not stress yourselves out with this. Just give yourself time. There's a certain time that has to pass before you go on to the next level. Stay strong, okay? Do not give up. You have to enjoy watching these shows. You have to enjoy reading. That's why if you're not enjoying the book you're reading, do not read it. Find a subject, find a book that you're really going to like. You have to enjoy what you're doing. If you're watching a show, watch it because you enjoy it. If you enjoy it, you're going to learn. But if you get bored while you're watching it or you're reading it, that's going to have a negative effect on you. Isn't 3 pages too much? No, 3 pages is actually very short. I think it was my study, my research isn't the 2 before. I had 10 pages of introduction, so introduction, 3 pages is very short. Of course, I'm going to send it to Ms. Dönmez and Can Bolat, and they are going to share it with you guys. Can we use I? You can use I in English, but I would advise you not to. Okay, try to stay clear of using I. Okay, we don't want active sentences because this is an academic paper. But unlike Turkish, you can use I. Okay, you can use I and we, but try not to. Okay, it's more effective if you don't. Okay. Well, thank you. Good old Hajam. Thank you very, very much for that message. I love you very much, my dear teacher.
May I ask something?
Of course, please do.
So while I'm reading any, for example, article, I can't, understand everything in that article, But sometimes I'm just saying to myself, like, you understand all the words, all the meanings of those words, but after that, why don't you just understand, the sentences, like the complete sentences? Why don't you just understand that? So, even though I know the words, what is the reason, of that I can't understand just the whole sentence?
Is in articles they have complex sentence structures. They're not like normal novels or normal storybooks or even magazines. They have complex structures, and if that is a structure that you're not used to, you're going to find it very difficult to understand, even though you know all of the words in the sentence. So my advice would be, do not give up. Yes, you may not be able to understand what the sentence is saying. It's not a problem, okay? If you see a difficult sentence, if you're not understanding it, just know that it's natural. Seriously, it's totally acceptable. You might not be able to understand it. Try to work it out. Try using translating applications, or ask someone who would know. I would advise you to ask someone who knows, who's good in academic English, so that you can learn from them. Every structure you don't understand, once you ask someone who knows, then you can learn that structure. Okay, if you carry on reading articles, after a certain amount of time, you will start understanding them.
Yeah. So it's okay not to understand, even for you, right?
Of
like
course.
Yeah.
It's totally.
If you become, for example, advanced level of English, but it's so normal not to understand some things in like news even. Is it normal? Is it normal for?
Yes, it's normal. Think of it this way: you're not a native speaker. Because you're not a native speaker, it's totally natural for you to not understand some sentences, because you've only, when you look at languages, there are so many different sorts of sentence structures, especially in English, especially in academic English. And when you look at the news, you see formal structures that are being used in news. Now, if you're not familiar with these structures, then you're not going to understand them. But this is not a bad thing. Don't ever think that this is bad. It's not. It's totally natural. But the more you come across sentences, sentence structures you don't know, the more you learn. Okay, so don't let these bring you down. Let them help you to learn even more.
Okay, thank you very much. Yeah.
You're very welcome.
Such a relief. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Okay, how do you know if you've learnt or if you're improving? Well, the more you read, you'll be aware that there's more structures you understand. You'll learn a lot more words. But the way I would say to assess yourself is to write. For example, you're watching TVs, you're watching, reading books, reading magazines, articles, newspapers. Every month, or I'd advise you to write every day. Try to take out time, maybe half an hour, maybe an hour to write. Okay, try to use different sentences, sentence structures, try to use different words, maybe new words that you've used. And when you feel comfortable writing, okay, you're going to be aware that you are improving. So I'd say try writing. Thesis. For master's thesis, well, 10 pages, is it short? My master's thesis, I think it was 30 pages for the literature review. 30 pages is very long, but my subject, the subject of my thesis needs 30 pages. So personally, when we look at thesis, especially master's thesis, you have to be aware of your area. Okay, try to look at other theses that have been done in the same area that you're studying. And then decide. You see, your literature review, do you know what's important? You have to give the sufficient information for the reader to understand what you're saying. Because in a thesis, you have to build your research. You have to build your thesis. So it's only you that can answer whether 10 pages is enough or not. Sit back, pretend you're somebody else, or pretend you're reading somebody else's thesis, okay? And start reading your literature review. Because your research question defines what information you add into your literature. Your results section defines what you should add into your literature. Your methods section defines what you should use in your literature section. So look at them as a whole and see if you have given sufficient information. If you feel that you have given sufficient information and there is no more information that must be given, then 10 pages is enough. but always stay clear. And this goes again for everybody, not just Göktuğ. Irrelevant information is a no-no. Keep irrelevant information out of your studies, okay, out of your theses. What is sufficient is the question that you can answer yourself. I hope I've been able to answer your question, Göktuğ. English interviews, I'd say prepare beforehand. Say, for example, I'm assuming you're going to be going into the interview, if I'm correct. Then what I would do is I would sit down or stand in front of a mirror, okay? Or record yourself on the computer. Prepare a few questions for yourself and then answer them. Now, when you use a mirror, you see yourself. Now, in interviews, you have to look straight, believe in yourself, okay? Because if you believe in yourselves when you're in an interview, then the person interviewing you is going to believe in you. Trust in yourself. If you believe in yourself, if you trust yourself, then your answers are going to be brilliant. Okay? But practice. Ask yourself prepare some questions for yourself and constantly answer them. Try not to overtalk. Try not to give unnecessary information. Give the vital information, but try to keep your sentences long without babbling. You're welcome, Razia. Okay. Personally, I have a question on memorizing words, especially for academic areas. I would not advise you guys to memorize, because if you're memorizing, you're not learning the language. Okay, that's why I always tell my own students, and I'm telling you all now, do not try to memorize them, okay? What you have to do, if you're learning a new word, open up your book, learn 5 new words. Open up your book, write a paragraph using these 5 words. 3 days later, write another paragraph using these 5 words. This is very important. You have to learn the language. You have to learn the vocabulary. Don't memorize them. Memorizing is a no-no, because if you memorize them, you're going to forget them very easily. For example, when you guys acquire Turkish as you grow up, you're not memorizing the words, you're learning them. They're becoming a part of you. That's why you have to make these words a part of you and a part of your personal life. Use these words to write sentences about yourself, about your feelings, about your thoughts. Then you will have learnt them, not memorized them. Yes, do use footnotes when necessary. You know how I've spoken of basic information in the slide? I said stay away from basic information if you don't need to add them. You can give these basic information or those that the reader needs to know, but you don't need to add it into your article, add them in the footnotes. You're very welcome, Göktuğ. You're very welcome, Ekrem. I'm very happy for you, Harun. Very welcome, Hilal. Very welcome, Merve. And I think our questions are done. If there are no more questions, I would like to thank you all for attending. I hope I have been of some help for all of you. Thank you for listening.